I don't think there is anyone in this class who desires to be in an abusive relationship. I don't think anyone desires to sign up for a class and end up with an F. I don't think anyone goes to school for 5, 10, 15, 20 years to end up in a cubicle and then find themselves completely miserable. I think we're all governed by hope and dreams and fantasies, and they have no wrinkles in them initially. You know, no kid desires to be like their parents. They always imagine themselves to be much better. There is this painter, and I think we've talked about it, maybe you've even seen it on some of the modules. His name is Thomas Cole. He was part of a I suppose you could say part of a cult. Not really, but maybe. He gave birth to 4 set of paintings: childhood, youth, manhood, and old age. So, that's all. Are you satisfied with my underrated response to your very profound question? So what you have in the first painting is a kid, is an infant, naked, and naked in the sense that there is no shame, there is no guilt, because for the most part those feelings and emotions and perspectives are social constructions. You know, if you go to the Eskimo country, and we've talked about this before perhaps, that if you're a guest at someone's house, the wife will knock on the door and says, "My husband said I should offer you myself as a gift. If you want, I can come lay with you." It doesn't mean that they're attracted to you. It doesn't mean that the wife wants to divorce. It just means that that's the way they function. And so there is no shame, there is no guilt, there is no repentance in doing such things. Here in this country, the story is very different. So what you have is a kid who has no clothing. They're not ashamed of their body parts, how others may perceive them. They're really free in many ways. And they jump up and down on the tiny little raft. They're happy. They haven't yet been touched by life. When you look inside the boat, it's filled with grass and flowers and shrubs. It's really, really nice. The water is really, really calm. You know, and that's how parents ought to create a world for their children. Keep them away from harm's way. The background is a little difficult to bear because it is dark, it is a cave. When you look at what's above the cave, it's rocky, dead branches. There is nothing that's alive, but the kid doesn't see that. It's kind of like you. You have no idea what it means to be him or me, people with some age, frailty of the body, frailty of the mind, hopes and dreams crushed by life. You're governed by hope. That's why you take classes. That's why you keep doing what you're doing. So if you paid attention, when people ask me questions in this class, most of the answers I give, to some extent, are dark. If Zoni was here, you would say, "Man, this class is depressing," right? And that's because I can no longer have the sort of joy that lives in a child who has not been touched or contaminated by life. The second painting is really, really interesting, which is, in the first painting, there is an angel on the boat that all kids, when they come to life, and they're just journeying in life, there are these entities that protect them. When you become a young adult, you look at your parents and you say, Mom, I just want to do things on my own. And you say the same things to your dad. And instructors tell you that if you want to pass the class, you got to do A, B, C, D. And kind of like, Mark, he has a kid. And he tries to train his kid to think a certain way, feel a certain way, behave a certain way. But this 10, 11, 12-year-old looks at his father and says, Dad, what the hell do you know? I mean, look at you. Look at your beard. It looks awful. And so what the kid doesn't see is that, and of course, there is this huge temple in the sky. And that's a gift that's given to all young adults. You're going to go to school, you're going to get a job, you're going to make lots of money, you're going to buy yourself a house, you're going to find a nice companion, and you guys are going to live a happy life. You're not going to be like your parents, you're not going to be like the rest of society, you're not going to fall under the category of 60% divorce rate, you're not going to be lonely, you're not going to be depressed. You'll reach the promised land. But young kids or adults don't really see the winding road ahead, the complexities of life. They're just kind of blinded by all the ridiculous things that they imagine. They're good, don't get me wrong, they're great. They're just infantile. They haven't yet been ironed out by life. And so comes a third painting, which is manhood. When you're no longer 10, 12, 15, 16, when you think yourself to be intelligent, you take a class and you feel dumb. When you think you can write well, but you get an F. When you think you're very patient, you're very forgiving, you're very generous, you get into a relationship and you realize you're possessive, you have zero capacity to love, to be generous, you're not really forgiving, you're very possessive, you're just a jerk altogether. And then you realize what little control you had in life, in manhood or in adulthood, they're taken away from you. You have a job, you hate your job, you want to quit, but you can't because you need rent money, you need food money. You want to get out of the relationship, but guilt overtakes you. You want to do a whole host of things, but there's life standing in front of you, in your way. And all of a sudden you realize, despite all the things you wanted to achieve in life, you didn't want to be like me, you wanted your class to be interesting and exciting and inspiring. You realize little by little, life kind of brings you down here and slaps some reality in your face. And then you realize there is nothing wrong with being an underachiever. As long as you can achieve anything and remain afloat and not lose hope completely, that's a good life to have. It's mostly Americans who expect so much in life. And it's because of the world of advertisement, it's because of just the way this culture is being young. Consider Jane Austen. You shouldn't just marry for money, you should marry for love. And then she kind of retracts and says, you should marry for both money and love. You go to many places on this planet and realize making money is tough, and finding love is tough. It's not even worth it. And so if you can just find someone who has a little bit of money, just marry them. If love happens, good. If it doesn't happen, fine. At least, you have a roof over your head, your belly is full. It's only here. Look at all these, all these tiny little communities or groups of people, right? And they all demand rights. You can't find this anywhere else. It's only here. The idea of justice and equality, these are things that we have never done in our human history. And for the past 50, 60 years, everybody wants to be equal, everybody wants justice, everyone wants fairness. These are just ridiculous, infantile things to have. It just won't happen. And the only way you can have them really is for someone like Obama or someone to come and create this thin facade, this illusion that yes, there is freedom, yes, there is liberty, yes, there is equality, yes, there is justice, and it just takes a Trump to come and demolish the whole thing. That's the best we can do. And that's been proven over and over and over in human societies. You know, I think what you should do, if you want to know what things are best to achieve, first figure out your capacity. You know, that in itself takes a long time. You know, some people just come from broken backgrounds, but they want relationships that are flawless. Oh shit, if you're damaged goods, the truth is everything you touch is going to be damaged. You know, if you don't know that, then you're always going to blame the other person for all the awful things that are happening in your relationship. There comes a point where you just grow tired of the sort of scumbag that you are and you've always been. Then you say, you know what? I'm just going to find someone who looks like me and smells like me and tastes like me. And then the both of you can just sit in the room and punch each other out. Thank you very much, Conan. Very kind. It's not good to be an overachiever without resources. You know, you want to fly to the moon, make sure you have some money. That you're in touch with the right people. Hello, Abi. Carmen, yes. Avery?
Is it important to have a meaningful life?
No, not at all. No. Did you break up
Oh, no. Did I break up?
with your boyfriend?
No.
Are you going to?
No.
Oh. Did you ever think about breaking up?
I mean, we have before.
There you go. See? So that's the answer to your question. So what usually happens is you're sad, lonely, pathetic, miserable, depressed. Okay? And like a good leech, you know what a leech is? It's like a worm that sucks your meat and sucks the blood. So you go to a party, not because you like to have fun, but because you're a leech. You go out there, you look at a man, let's call him Mr. Love, Quinn Love, right? And you say, okay, how can I get close to him and attach to his meat, his body, and suck the blood out of him? And then you guys do. You chit-chat, you go out for a cup of coffee, you drink a little, smoke a little. That's meaningful, no? It's fun, filled with joy and pleasure and fantasies. I mean, look at his hair, you know? Put your fingers through his hair, you know, walk with him when there's wind. Both of your hairs are just flowing everywhere, you know? You being envious of his hair and him being envious of your hair. That's a great relationship. And then, of course, you put a topping on the whole thing, like a sundae. You have sex. And let's just say it's the first or second or third time, and it's fun, beautiful. There's a good amount of meaning there. There is no reason for you to go out there look for meaning. You have it. It's in your life. You're sad, lonely, pathetic, desperate. No meaning. You become a good leech. Meaning. Then, like anything else in life, pleasure, it doesn't matter what kind it is, it has a timeline. And then it has a shelf life. There comes a point, you look at his hair and you're just not moved. You look at or you hear what he has to say about anything and he's not interesting. And he wants to say, you want to go to the bedroom? And you say, no, you suck as a human being. But what the hell happened to the meaning? It disappeared. Why? That's the way life works. And then what happens is every time you're with him, you realize that your relationship has zero meaning. It doesn't inspire you, excite you. It doesn't give you dreams or hopes. Yes, maybe when you guys first met, you wanted lots of kids with him, you wanted to buy a house with him, but 2, 3, 4 months pass by, you realize you want to find a repellent of sort, that every time you see him, you're kind of just pushed away. You're torpedoed away from him very, very quickly. And so Now you're looking for a way out because every time you see him, he robs you of meaning. He robs you of comfort. He's in fact a great disturbance to your life. Now, what you do is you come to class, you raise your hand and you say, Professor, yes, how do I break up with my boyfriend? Now, what you're saying is you want a different kind of meaning. Just in case I tell him you suck, I want you out of my life, and he makes me feel bad about myself and what I've done, that's going to rob me of the meaning I have about myself. I'm a decent human being, I'm this, I'm that. Is there a way that I could protect myself? Can you give me some sort of a clue? Now, what the sort of meaning you're looking for is liberation. How do I find liberty, freedom, from a guy who is sucking the meaning out of my life? I guess the point I'm trying to make is, as long as you're engaged, as long as you're consumed by whatever is giving you pleasure, there is no need for meaning. At the moment you begin to think, the moment you begin to internalize an experience, the moment you begin to reflect, that's when you create some distance between you and the things in your life. And when that distance or space is created, you look at it and you ask yourself, why is it there? Why do I give it value? Why does it give me meaning? Why do I want to pursue it? It happens in every single relationship. No relationship is safe from moments of reflection and the desire to divorce and walk away completely. And whenever that happens, it means that the meaning that once existed, it's no longer there. And the absence of meaning could last for a minute, or it could last for a month, or it could just last for years. People who are hopeless, depressed, they have no meaning. People who want to commit suicide, they have no meaning, except I will find meaning in ending my life. So every time you find yourself discontent, someone has robbed you of meaning. And when there is no meaning, there is no purpose, there is no value, there is no future. Remember the first day of this class when someone said, why can't we just open up the classroom and just have everybody just talk? Because for me, it has no meaning. An 18-year-old doesn't have experiences. And even if they do, they can't process it well. They're filled with biases, angers, resentments, envy. This is not a bathroom where you can just shit and walk away. Connor.
What you're saying is self-reflect.
Yes. Sit in the back of the room. Not the front, the way you usually do, Connor. Sit in the way back. Just go to sleep. The less you think, the happier you are. Naylan, and then...
I don't remember if it was you that talked about this, and if it was, I apologize, but what do you think about like euthanasia? Like, do you think that it would be moral for somebody like a family member who's suffering, like, or
Yeah, I have a will before going for the heart surgery. My wife and I sat, and I said, listen, if my recovery is a little difficult, if for some strange reason things have gone bad, just end my life. Sit on me. There is only so much pain anyone can endure. Not only will there come a time where you just give up on life, other people in your life who are taking care of you also will grow to be profoundly resentful of you still hanging on to life when there is no life to be had for you anymore. There are people who suicide in a very healthy way. It's something we talked about yesterday in class. Robin Williams is one, Malcolm X is another, Jesus Christ is another, Socrates is another. There are lots of people. My own teacher, when he came to realize he has cancer stage 4, and it spread everywhere, he starved himself to death. Why do you want to hang on to life when your only companion is just pain? I think very much like all these men deciding how women should treat their bodies, I think when you're a man and can't get pregnant, you're not poor, okay? You have a lot of money in your pocket, but because you're a man and you're in a position of power and you decide for other people, I think euthanasia is very much the same. If I'm stage 4 cancer and my life is agonizing, you have no right to tell me whether I should commit suicide or hang on to life. You don't have the pain. All you have is power and comfort. You should have some shame, go somewhere, have someone create some pain in your life, and just increase that pain little by little until it becomes unbearable for you. And I will assure you, if the pain is too much, and this is just a trial, you will ask to be put to death. There is also another complexity with euthanasia, which is pain, very much like alcohol, intoxicates you. It robs you of sobriety, of thinking, of reflecting, of making decisions. There are people who've been in comas for pain-free, true, for like 10 years, and all of a sudden they come to life. How, why, I don't really know. But is it possible for some illnesses to be cured? Yeah. But one of the things that pain does is that it robs you of having access to your future. Future does not exist. For those of us in this class who have been in relationships, what usually happens when you have an argument that turns into a disagreement or a fight with your companion, it's like despite having a 20-year of a great history with your companion, that one fight for 1 hour is forceful enough for you to sit somewhere and contemplate walking away from the relationship altogether. That's what pain does. And very much like alcohol, you shouldn't drive when you're drunk, which means that you shouldn't make a decision when you're consumed by pain. And so it becomes very tricky. Who should ultimately make the decision? Should you stay alive? Should someone put you to death in a kind and compassionate way? We do this to animals all the time. A dog has severe arthritis, can't even eat because it's far too painful. We take him to the backyard and shoot him. That's what you do. For the longest time, if we didn't have the science of how to heal a horse's leg when it got broken, well, you shoot the horse. Now the story is a little different. As we make advancements in certain areas of life, what we used to do 10 years ago, 20 years ago, a century ago, we no longer do them. Is euthanasia or mercy killing applicable, acceptable? Yeah, in some areas, absolutely. Dr. Kevorkian did that. Cancer patients, injected them with some stuff and they would die peacefully. Hello. When I was very, very young, how old are you?
19.
Yeah, younger than that. I fell in love with this person. And, hello. And one of the things about love, Naylan, if you haven't really observed, is that there is no higher experience than the experience of love, the sort of emotions it generates for you. If your companion looks at you while you're in love and you're sitting at the top of Mount Everest and asks you, do you want me to end your life right now? You should say yes, please. Because you will die a happy person. There is no experience in life that's going to generate more creativity, more contentment. I mean, that's your promised land, that's the Garden of Eden. What sucks is not being consumed by this particular emotion and die insufficiently. That's awful. Because you're forced to kind of reflect on your life and you say, man, what a miserable life I had. Didn't do much. I am an underachiever, like Junaid. Yes.
I watched a TV show
You have a TV?
No, I was
Is it flat screen? How big?
50.
50?
That's it.
What's wrong with you, man?
I think the big one,
Yeah, you should go to Costco. It's on sale now.
that's the house I live in. Around the biggest
Ah, okay.
thing for me.
Yeah.
I was watching a show with a woman, she was from Russia, and she said, nowhere else in the world has people expect to be happy more than America.
It's true.
She was like, oh, they have so much, but they complain.
Yeah.
How do you think that is? Like, why does that happen in America? Why is it so different to the rest of the world?
For Iska has a kid, Abi has 5 or 6 of them. Mark has only one that he knows of. I have a few. And what they can tell you is that if you don't punish your kids once in a while, spare the rod, spoil the child. If you don't punish your kids once in a while, they just grow up to be idiots. Americans are like that. They're far too privileged. I mean, look at the students we have. You look at them in a certain way, they'll complain. You give them an F, they complain. Even though they're idiots. They can't write worth shit. It doesn't matter what you say, what you do. They always complain. Their belly is full, they complain. They have a roof over their head, they complain. Education is free, the class is too hard, they complain. It doesn't matter what you give them. They're alive, they complain. They die, they complain. So as an immigrant, you come here, you say, okay, how do you make Americans happy? And the truth is, you can't. This is just the way it is. But if you were to propel yourself, say, maybe 500 years from now, and a lot of things are going to happen, because no empire is going to stand for too long. Like any kid, eventually you're going to become an adult, eventually you're going to be middle-aged, and eventually you're going to get old, and eventually you're going to get sick and die a miserable death. It has happened to every empire under the sun. America is no different, and it's not exempt. Okay? And so you need to wait and wait and wait and wait until you experience famine, until you experience poverty, until life just smacks you a few times. So, yeah. Anyways. Yeah. Can I have the first one?
Has to do with answering the thing about euthanasia. Does that apply to the
No, death penalty is a different story. Death penalty is a little complicated, and I'll give you an example. In Louisiana, for example, for the past, I think 110 years, if I'm not mistaken, there have been almost maybe 40 people who've been executed. And the numbers may be wrong, but 37 or 38 of them have been black. So there's a good amount of bias that takes place in death penalty because it has to do with the justice system. It has to do with racism. It has to do with poverty. It has to do with, sometimes, for the first time in Louisiana, they actually put to death a man who had a mental illness. And even though the lawyers had argued that, this guy did not confess to this thing until a good 24 months had passed. And he was coerced, he was manipulated, he was put in solitary confinement, and he just wanted to get out. And he just said, yeah, I did it. Not because he did it, but because he wanted to get out of the darkness. So death penalty has to do with you having committed a crime of sorts, and then you're taken before a group of people, and they look at you, and everybody has their own biases. They look at you, they realize you're black or white or brown or blue, and they say, well, I don't really like brown-colored people. So, and they've done A, B, C, D, let's just put them to death. And the idea of innocent until proven, guilty, that doesn't go for you. You're exempt from that particular kind of scenario. So death penalty, the background has to do with a crime that someone has committed. Euthanasia is a different story. Euthanasia is me standing here, and it could happen, and all of a sudden my heart gives. Okay? And it's something that I think about all the time, especially when I go on walks at 6 in the morning. I have my phone, and there's a message on the phone that just in case you fall me on the ground, this is the number you call. Okay. And so I fall to the ground. They take me to Kaiser, and I'm hooked up to machines. And the doctors look at my wife and say, he didn't get oxygen to his brain for, 50 hours. He's brain dead. And we can keep him alive through machines, but he's brain dead. And little by little, my organs begin to fail. And then my wife has to make a decision. And whether or not I'm in pain, nobody really knows. So euthanasia has to do with someone being really, really sick and then decides to end his or her life. The kinder set of words that we use for euthanasia is mercy killing. That someone is in so much pain and they're in such agony that they just end their pain, end their life. Second question. They're both the same. In Norway, for example, if you kill your husband, they're not going to send you to Folsom Prison. They're not going to send you to San Quentin. They're going to send you to a halfway house by the ocean somewhere. And it's a compound of maybe 20 tiny little houses, each being 3-4 bedrooms. You have a kitchen there, you have a bathroom there, you have a TV, flat screen TV that's about 80 inches. Okay, not like Jiray. He doesn't live in poverty. And then everybody has access to knives and various other weapons, if you want to consider them as weapons. They sit together, they make food, they talk, they watch TV, they read the Bible. They are being punished, but that punishment creates a good amount of discipline. They get a chance to kind of see the way they think about things, review their past. Some punishments become a little too excessive, kind of like the American prison system, that you go in as a lamb, poverty, racism, all sorts of awful things that happen to you in life where you realize that there is no way out, there is no social mobility. Every time you try to take a couple steps up, someone smacks you on the head. And you realize, you know what, I'm just going to steal, I'm just going to rob, I'm going to do A, B, C, D. And then you get caught. And nobody, considers the fact that your skin color is this, your background is that, your parents were never there. They don't care about any of that stuff. So they kind of send you to Folsom Prison. And you're there with murderers and rapists and all sorts of, awful human beings. And then you realize the only way you can survive, after, of course, doing some sexual favors to other people, is that you have to become as vicious as they are. And when you're released, you're no longer a lamb. You're a wolf. So punishments, if they're excessive, you don't get a chance to reflect. You don't get a chance to review your life. You don't get a chance to baptize yourself through the punishments. There is no discipline there, Discipline is what parents do to their kids, if they happen to be relatively mentally sound, parents, I mean. That you ask your kids to do the math homework. And kids are just lazy, and rightly so. They just want to go out there and have fun. They have this beautiful, young, energetic body, and they want to throw it around. They want to break the wall. They want to break the windows. That's their right. But parents are fearful of their children's future. So you scream at your kid. Once in a while, you gently smack them. And they cry. You give them some ice cream, and then you say, okay, honey, listen, watch some TV. Watch some TV, and then do some math work. I'll sit with you. And then you hope that the sitting with your kid or pushing them to do math every day from 4 to 5, that discipline will hopefully protect their future. They're not going to turn out to be criminals. They won't suffer from, say, poverty of sorts. Discipline, the most important thing that punishment that comes with discipline, the most important that they have is that they care. If you come to my class and you play with your phone, or you have your laptop open, I have a couple of options. I look at you a couple of times to see if you can get the non-verbal language. And I realize you don't get it. And we have a saying in Persian, "Bedar migam ke divar beshnave," that I'm speaking to the door so that the window can hear. That I look at Jiray and I'm talking to Jiray, but my comments really are not meant for Jiray. They're meant for you, but they're meant for Iska. Okay. And add to the fact that I don't come from a culture that's direct. I come from an indirect culture because we don't like embarrassing people. Okay. And I realize it doesn't matter what I say, it doesn't matter what I do, some people just don't pay attention. I have a couple of options. I can either take a good amount of interest in you, which means that there is something about you that attracts me, whether it's your mind, whether it's the way you think, whether it's the way you feel, whether it's your body language that tells me you're paying attention. Okay. If I care, then I will embarrass you. And then I'll say, can I talk to you after class? And then I will try to speak to you in a way that if I've offended you in any way, that will be removed from you, that stain. Okay, but it requires pain, it requires care and interest. If I don't have the care or the interest, I won't even bother punishing you. My only punishment will be when the semester ends, you will see the grade on your transcript. And if you email me, I won't reply. You're no longer my student. I have no obligations. Just in case you have had parents who tried to punish, and with that comes discipline. They cared, they loved, they were interested. There came a point where despite everything that they did for you, we didn't do as they commanded. So you know what happens to all of us? The kids agitate you, then they irritate you, then they frustrate you, then you're confused as to what path do I need to take to knock some sense into this fucking kid's head. And after a while you realize you're just exhausted. I mean, it's not fun being Mark or Abi or Iska. I mean, he's lucky because his kid is somewhere else, or me. But you see them every day, and every day you have to fight them. Pick up the goddamn trash. Take the spoon, eat with your spoon, do your math work. There comes a point, you work 9 to 5, you clean the house, you do all sorts of things, and you ask the simplest thing of your kids. And then you do the awfulest thing that any parent will eventually be pushed to do. You give up. And your kid says, "Mom, I'm leaving, going out." Fine. "Should I come home at a certain time?" Whatever. "Mom, I'm moving out." Okay. "Mom, I failed my math." It's all right. There are lots of failures in this world. You can be one of them. Another loser. It's okay. So parents have to go through a lot of crap to ultimately just give up. So when you had asked me some time ago, why don't I open the classroom for conversation among students? What you failed to realize, I've been in this business for 30 years. There isn't very many things I haven't heard. And I know this culture, and I have been 18. And it doesn't matter what you've experienced. An 18-year-old doesn't have the good blender inside to be able to mow down experiences well. It's just like a lump stuck here. It's a great question, though. But I apologize if I've offered you an answer that's fiercest desire inside you to find the bridge and jump from it to see if you can swim. Jure, what?
One question.
What is it?
And parent is like the child.
Can a parent dislike their child? Yes, 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 yes. Not just dislike, hate.
Not for life. Not just
For life, it's much easier for kids to be disliked by fathers than it is for mothers. Mothers just have a very, very unique relationship. Unless you happen to be a mother with a type A personality, where you're very demanding, where you're a perfectionist, and you just ask for kids to do things when it's not really their time. And you give as a parent so much to your child only to realize everything has been wasted. I mean, the idea of the prodigal son, that despite this kid wasting everything that his father had, still being open and receptive to receiving his child, that's a miracle, you know. Will parents give up on their kids, dislike their kids, hate their kids, make them an outcast? Absolutely. Sometimes is it good? Yeah. I mean, if you got like 4 kids and one of them is an addict, you don't want the other 3 to be contaminated. If you happen to come from a very conservative environment and you have 4 girls and one of them just likes to hang out with boys and do A, B, C, D, well, you pray that she turns to be 18 so she can be driven out, because you don't want the other 3 girls to be contaminated. You know, in other words, if you have like 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, or even 2 kids, and one could possibly, potentially, negatively impact another, you don't want that kid to be around too much. You know. But, and there are instances where the moment this kid comes out of you, and it's not very often, but it does happen, where the man or the woman looks at this kid and says, I just don't like this kid. Why, how? No one knows. It's one of those 7 wonders of the world, okay? But for parents to dislike their kid for life, that kid must have put the parents through hell, you know? And it's usually the firstborn. And I'll tell you why it's usually the firstborn. Let's say you're my kid. You're my first child. It's me, my wife, and you. My wife and I are going to give you 100% of who and what we are. It's just you. We've invested a good amount of time and energy in you. When the second one comes about, that's Iska. When Iska comes about, well, we can't give him 100%. We can only give him 50%. And this is something that parents don't really tell you. But we love our firstborn just a bit too much, and a tad more than the second. It doesn't mean that you don't love your second one, you do. But the first one is just special. You know, it's like your first cup of coffee. And so when the first one disobeys, and it continues and continues and continues, you become hardened from the inside, and some of your anger is taken out on the second one. And before you know it, you have lost your first kid, and the second one doesn't even like you. So again, you know, being parents is kind of tricky. It's best not to be these days. If you can buy a dog, I think Americans have found a way out of this mess. Buy a dog, cat, parakeet, guinea pig, doesn't really matter. Just buy a pet. And that pet could be your child. You walk the dog every day around the lake, that's good.
What do you,
Yeah.
what do you think having a type A parent?
In some ways, it can be really, really good because, and this is not something that the kid can understand while they're being pushed into doing things they don't really want to do. If you're able to withstand the hurricane of a type A personality parent, you may end up at Stanford. And you may end up getting a PhD or a master's degree in something. Doesn't really matter what. And then from the age 25, 26 on, you may have a very, very, very secure life. It does mean that there's a good chance that you won't like your mom as much because she pushed you a little too much. So in that area, you're insufficient. In the other areas, physical security of life, money, food, shelter, job security, being future-oriented, you being a go-getter, being very aggressive, being independent. These are all wonderful qualities, but there's a price to be paid for that. Perfectionists are just very, very tough to be around. If, on the other hand, you have a teacher like Mozart, and you want to be a pianist, it's good to be around Mozart. You just should pray that you will have the proper capacity to withstand the demands of Mozart. Because what Mozart wants is for you to become like him. And that's great. It's much better to be Mozart than Liberace. But it's tough. Being around anyone that's demanding is tough. Yeah.
You know, word of my question, but why, it might not be like this as much as you know, but why are people so
there are, I guess, many reasons. One has to do with religion. That America really is a Puritan culture in many ways. Consider the Jesus story. This guy is not the product of sex. Joseph and Mary did not have what rabbits do. He just all of a sudden came about. If you think about that in certain ways, you realize that his birth is a sexless birth. Sex, in some ways, in the Christian tradition, is something that's frowned upon. And look at, the celibacy, the philosophy of celibacy that comes not just with Christianity, but with the majority of religious traditions. I think whenever you don't understand something well, you try to always have it behind closed doors. Imagine, I don't know if you know anyone who's been an alcoholic, but initially what they do is they say, no, I'm not really an alcoholic. I just like to drink like 10 times a day. That doesn't make me an alcoholic. I'm just a social drinker. And every time you try to talk to them about this disease, they're going to push back until they come to realize that they're really being severely damaged by this disease, and then go to the meeting. Once they go to the meeting, they want to understand what this disease is and how they can overcome it. So they stand up. And if there was any shame, if there was any place they want to go hide, not this environment, they stand up. And in a relatively arrogant, but in a healthy arrogance, they say, I am Amir Sabzavari, and I am an alcoholic. And I want to understand this disease. So I think whenever you try to understand something, whatever shame or guilt or repressed emotions you may have had about it will go away. And one of the things that happens to a lot of parents who assume that their kids were straight, and eventually the kids break the news, Mom, I'm gay, or Mom, I'm trans, or this or that, is that there is an adjusting period. The parents kind of find themselves in a very confused state. They become also angry. They self-blame. If I had done A, B, C, D, my child wouldn't have been this way. And without the kids knowing and how fearful they are of the sort of feelings that they have and their kid's future, when the kid goes to school, they go to Barnes and Nobles and they buy books. And they read the books in private. Okay. You're not yet a parent, but what will happen, just in case you become one, I hope not, but just in case you become one, and if you happen to have a girl, And if her body is little by little growing, here and there, and she comes and says, Mom, what's sex? It's such a horrifying place to be as a mom, but especially as a father. Because you have to sit down and say, well, what exactly do you say? Because it is also a dangerous component to human life. We're not the sort of culture that looks at sex in a healthy way. It's very much like alcohol. It's a disease. So I guess my very, very short and crude answer to your question would be the following. When you have no desire to understand something well, there's a good amount of fear inside it. And the fear is justified. But we can talk about sex. You want to talk about sex? Or why not? We haven't. The first thing about sex, it feels good. Do you like pizza? Do you like when you eat pizza? Does it feel good? Are you embarrassed to say pizza feels good when I eat it? See? Just like that. Sex feels good. It just doesn't feel good, it feels great. No, it's universal. Why do you think we have 8 billion people on this planet? Because what? They want to save the human race? Really? Yeah. Sex also brings about meaning. Imagine you have a boyfriend and you guys just had a fight and you haven't talked for like 2 days. There is only so much of the shit you can keep on the inside. He looks at you, you look at him, and the both of you run into the bedroom, undress, and you have sex. What happens to the anger? Sex is like pushing the delete button. The anger goes away. Now you have pleasure. And then you know what you say to him? Oh, Joe, I'm so sorry for being a bitch. And he says, oh, I am sorry too for being such a jerk. Forgive me. Sex! It's like Clorox. It disinfects. Sex! You're lonely, sad, pathetic. You go somewhere. You find someone attractive. Well, how do you get rid of the pressure created inside you by attraction? Sex! Gets rid of loneliness. Sex! Look at you. Lonely, sad, pathetic. Have sex with someone 4 or 5 times. All of a sudden, there is intimacy. Marriage, children, house, sex! Sex also tames people. You have a man. Let's say you're a hetero, and you like him, but he just wants to have sex with you. And you guys do. And you have good sex. And so you have more sex. For 2 days, the two of you just lay in bed and have sex. One sex after another. And then you look into his eyes and you say, Jiray, I like you. And all of a sudden, Jiray, who just wants to be with people only for 1 day or 2 or 3, your very comment makes him feel really, really bad. That statement, Jiray, I like you, he sits back and says, oh my God, I really fucked up, didn't I? And so even though he wants to pack up his stuff and run away, how about we go to Rick and Ann's and have some breakfast? You have tamed this piece of crap over there. Tame. How? Sex. Sex also is the reason why you're here. A father who is no good, a man, I should say, who's no good, a woman who's no good, they have sex, you come about, and for the first time they're able to experience love and care and passion and responsibility for someone other than themselves. Sex. Sex is also instinctual in the sense that it's what's kept us around for millions of years. Sex is also training a man to become good at this particular craft. Imagine you have sex with someone and they're done in a minute. In a minute! You think they're going to look at you and say, honey, how was I? No, are you kidding? They're an embarrassment to the human race. So they're going to go somewhere, and for the first time, a man who is done in a minute, inwardly he repents. Father, forgive me for I came much too early. And then you know what he's going to do? Next time the two of you get together, he's going to be very mindful. Instead of a minute, it's going to be 10 minutes, then 20 minutes, then 30 minutes. Which means that the more the two of you lay in bed, the more your intimacy grows. But there is something you need to know about the pleasure factor. You know, the intensity of pleasure that's produced by sex, it deletes whatever shit that happened in your past. And it deletes whatever crap you want to be in the future. The pleasure produced by sex pushes you into the very present moment. Unless you just don't like this guy, or you don't like the relationship, or you're forced into doing something you don't want to do. If it's sincere, and if you like the person you're with, and if the two of you are doing it, for the first time in many, many, many days, if not weeks or months or years, you find yourself enjoying your life without any worries. You're drunk by the pleasure given to you through sex, and that's beautiful. And we haven't even talked about moments of orgasm. Put your hand down. It's a moment of absolute completion. There is nothing you need to do. There is no place you need to go. You have attained perfection. You're on standstill. You feel full and complete. You are rich. There is no poverty inside you. For that one tiny little moment, you know, if you happen to be an idiot, where you're just there for a good time and you want to run away afterwards, then, of course, that moment of perfection, the promised land that the Jews talk about relentlessly all the time. Are we good? Or should I continue? Continue? You had it? Jesus Christ, man. I thought like a good scientist we could sit and talk about this like in a scholarly, adult, mature way. Why is your hand up?
I think you overrated it a little bit. And you talk about it like this. It's crazy, crazy.
Well, let me also add.
You need better partners.
The way you
No,
talk
it's
about
not
it,
God.
like
It's
how
just like sick. Like, it's
that's not
wrong.
what's reality.
Well, I'm an actor. I teach. That's what I do. I have to. Well, I didn't mention something very, very, very important since you asked. The golden lotus that comes from the Chinese tradition, Arabian Nights that comes from the Middle Eastern world. The Kama Sutra that comes from the Indian tradition. You know, there is this philosophy that there are many ways to truth. There are many ways to get to God. There are many ways to be Christed. And not all have to be in the monastery. Not all have to be in you sitting and reading some ridiculous book like the Bible or the Quran. Sex is about energy. Sex is about the state of mind. Sex is about what you want to see in yourself, what you want to feel in yourself. Sex is about longevity. Sex is about choosing your partner well. It's more than just feelings. Sex is about making sure you never become an animal once you do it. You know how difficult that is? I'm not talking about you don't want to have an orgasm because you want this pleasure to continue. That you've had this training. Let me just finish all of this. From what little I know about human history, there have been these places called the House of Love. Women, especially women, are trained to have sex with specific men. And it starts with physical pleasure. It moves up to emotional pleasure. It moves up to intellectual pleasure. And then if the woman is really good, and if you as a man have had a relatively decent background in religion and philosophy and culture and society and politics, it moves up to the spiritual pleasure. But that's not in this culture. Like any other arts under the sun, it's very complicated. And sex is no different. It's complicated. There is a book that none of you in this class are familiar with. It's called the Panaria. It comes from a group of people that devoted their lives to Jesus Christ. So in one of their books, there is this story. Can I tell it to you? Maybe you can tell your religious parents. It's about one day, Mary, and I'm talking about his mother, Mary Magdalene goes to Jesus and says, I see that God lives inside you. Is there any way I can have that experience? Jesus looks at her and says, of course you can. How? This may not please some of you or your ears, but I'll tell it to you nevertheless. So Jesus disrobes, masturbates, and he has a good amount of his semen in his hand, and he puts it in his mouth and eats it and swallows it. And he looks at Mary and says, if you want to get really, really close and intimate with God, this is what you must do. But Mary doesn't really understand the subtleties, so she just passes out. She falls to the ground and wakes up like 10 minutes later. I guess the point I'm trying to make in all of this is, it's a great question, but consider sex to be like painting, like piano. If you want to be good at it, you have to study it really, really well. And you need to find a teacher. In a culture such as this, where everything is watered down, where you date at the age of 18 for ridiculous reasons, you have a boyfriend who's stupid, And then you guys have sex, you create intimacy, you create this future narrative, and nothing works out. Then you suffer a trauma, then you need therapy. Can't do anything with the people in this country. Yes, Jure. Your hand needs to go up now.
Why?
Because nobody asked a question. Maybe you can. Anyone else in this class? No. Avery?
No.
Carmen, I'm sorry you didn't ask anything today. I apologize. I think we have 2 more weeks left to class or to school. So. Have a good day.
Thank you. See you Wednesday.
Bye. Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. Today's Wednesday? Today's Wednesday.
Yeah, see you. Yeah, see you next
I
week.
won't see you next week. I'll see you
Have a safe trip.
after-
Bye.